Israelis practice red heifer ritual in front of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Some religious groups believe the ashes of the cows can be used to build a third Jewish temple in Jerusalem. A group of religious Israelis have been pictured practicing the ritual of the red heifer, which is meant to herald the building of a new Jewish temple on the site of Al-Aqsa Mosque. According to Jewish tradition, the ashes of a perfectly red heifer cow are needed for the ritual purification that would allow a third temple to be built in Jerusalem. That temple, say radical Jewish groups, must be constructed on the raised plateau in Jerusalem's Old City, known as the Temple Mount, where Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock Shrine stand today. Some believe this will herald the arrival of the Messiah, and possibly even the end of the world. Temple worshippers are now practicing the mitzvah, religious duty, of a red cow in front of the Temple Mount, which will enable the return of purity and the observance of all the temple mitzvahs, posted journalist Yinon Magal on Tuesday, along with a picture of activists from the Temple Institute. In 2022, 5 red heifers arrived in Israel from a Texas ranch and are now kept in an archaeological park next to Shiloh, an illegal Israeli settlement near the Palestinian city of Nablus. The Temple Institute imported the heifers for the eventual purpose of using them in a ritual after years of searching for blemish-free cows without a stray white or black hair. Their eventual slaughter on the Mount of Olives will, according to advocates, allow Jewish people to be purified so they can perform rites and worship on the site of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Research by a professor at Bar Ilan University estimated that the ashes of one cow could be made into enough cleansing water for 660 billion purifications. The cow being practiced upon in Magal's image does not appear to be one of the 5 red heifers from Shiloh. Rather, it seems to be a cutout. The traditional site of the ritual, the Mount of Olives, is seen in the background on the other side of Al-Aqsa Mosque, suggesting the practice run was performed within the Old City. The status quo in Jerusalem has long maintained that Jewish prayer is forbidden on the raised plateau in occupied East Jerusalem. The site is believed to be the location of 2 ancient Jewish temples. Jews are permitted to pray at the Western Wall, which runs along one side of the hill and is regarded as the last remaining part of the Second Jewish Temple that the Romans destroyed in 70 CE. Restrictions on non-Muslims entering the mosque have been in place since the Ottoman status quo, designating Jerusalem's holy sites to its sects, was established in 1757. The Chief Rabbinate of Jerusalem has also, since 1921, officially banned Jews from entering the Temple Mount. It ruled that Jews are forbidden to enter the site unless ritually clean, which is impossible without the ashes of a red heifer. Over the past century, religious Zionist groups, including the Temple Institute, have advocated for the return of Jewish prayer at Al-Aqsa, with some even advocating the demolition of the mosque and reconstruction of the temple. Radical Jewish groups advocating for the construction of a third temple on the Temple Mount hold beliefs rooted in Jewish eschatology, which concerns the end of days and the coming of the Messiah. This subject is highly sensitive, both religiously and politically, due to the significance of the Temple Mount to multiple religious communities. Historical and religious context. First and Second Temples. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem is the holiest site in Judaism, where the first temple, built by King Solomon, and the second temple once stood. Both temples were central to Jewish worship, housing the Ark of the Covenant and serving as the focal point for sacrifices and religious rituals. The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, and the second temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. Since then, Jews have mourned the loss of the temple, with prayers and hopes for its eventual restoration. The significance of the Third Temple. According to certain interpretations of Jewish eschatology, the construction of a third temple is a key event that must occur before the arrival of the Jewish Messiah, a divinely anointed leader who will bring about an era of peace and divine rule. For some groups, rebuilding the temple would not only fulfill biblical prophecy, but also pave the way for this messianic age. The Temple Mount's current status. The Temple Mount is now home to 2 significant Islamic sites, the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. The latter is built on what is traditionally believed to be the site of the Holy of Holies. the most sacred area within the ancient Jewish temple. For Muslims, the site is the third holiest in Islam, associated with the Prophet Muhammad's night journey. Radical movements and their beliefs, temple movements. Several radical Jewish groups, often referred to as temple movements, advocate for the rebuilding of the third temple on the Temple Mount. They believe that doing so is not only a religious obligation, but also a necessary step in bringing about the fulfillment of prophecy, which includes the arrival of the Messiah. Some of these groups actively work toward preparing for the temple's construction, including creating ritual objects, studying ancient temple practices, and even attempting to ascend the Temple Mount despite restrictions. Messianic expectations. These groups see the building of the temple as a precursor to the coming of the Messiah. In their view, the Messiah will restore the Jewish people to a state of divine favor, initiate the rebuilding of the temple, and establish a kingdom of peace and righteousness. For some, this messianic vision includes apocalyptic elements, where the establishment of the temple might be associated with the end of days, a period of divine judgment and the ultimate triumph of God. Conflict potential. The idea of rebuilding the temple on the Temple Mount is highly controversial and has the potential to spark significant conflict, particularly with the Muslim community, which sees the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Dome of the Rock as inviolable sacred sites. The Temple Mount is a flashpoint in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and any attempt to change the status quo could lead to severe unrest or violence. Broader implications. Beyond the immediate religious and political conflict, the concept of rebuilding the Third Temple has broader implications for Jewish-Christian relations, as some Christian groups also hold eschatological beliefs related to the Temple Mount. Additionally, the global Muslim community would likely react strongly against any perceived threat to Islamic holy sites. Jewish-Christian relations and eschatological beliefs. Christian eschatology and the Temple Mount Christian Zionism. Some evangelical Christian groups, particularly in the United States, support the rebuilding of the Third Temple as part of their eschatological beliefs. They see it as a key event in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, leading to the second coming of Christ. This belief is rooted in interpretations of the Book of Revelation and other New Testament texts, where the rebuilding of the temple is seen as a precursor to the end times and Christ's return. Tensions and alliances. While some Christian groups align with Jewish temple movements, believing they are fulfilling God's plan, this alliance can be complex. Many Jews are wary of this support, as it often comes with an agenda of eventual Christian dominance or conversion. This dynamic can create tension within Jewish-Christian relations, especially when Christian groups are seen as meddling in Jewish religious matters for their own eschatological purposes. Interfaith dialogue. The idea of rebuilding the temple could strain interfaith dialogues that aim to foster understanding and peace between Jews and Christians. While both religions share a connection to the Hebrew Bible, their interpretations of end-time events differ significantly, leading to potential misunderstandings and conflicts. Global Muslim community and perceptions. The sacredness of the Temple Mount in Islam. Islamic eschatology. In Islamic tradition, the Temple Mount, known as Haram al-Sharif, is the site of the Prophet Muhammad's night journey to heaven. It is also considered one of the three holiest sites in Islam, alongside Mecca and Medina. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque are deeply revered, and any attempt to alter their status is seen as a direct affront to Islamic beliefs and an attack on Muslim heritage. International Muslim response. Any move toward rebuilding the temple on the Temple Mount would likely provoke a strong reaction from the global Muslim community. This could manifest in widespread protests, increased anti-Israel sentiment, and possibly even violent confrontations. Governments in Muslim-majority countries would be under pressure to respond, leading to a potential escalation in tensions between Israel and the broader Muslim world. Potential for conflict. The Temple Mount is a focal point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Any attempt to rebuild the temple could trigger a violent response, not just from Palestinians, but from Muslims worldwide. The perception that Islamic holy sites are under threat could lead to a significant mobilization of Muslim communities, further complicating the already volatile situation in the region. religious and cultural identity. Jewish identity. For some Jews, the idea of rebuilding the temple is deeply connected to their religious identity and the fulfillment of their historical and spiritual destiny. However, this belief is not universally held within the Jewish community. Many Jews, particularly in the Reform and conservative movements, do not support the idea of rebuilding the temple, believing that Judaism has evolved beyond the need for a physical temple. Islamic and Christian identity. The Temple Mount is also a crucial element of Islamic and Christian identity. For Muslims, it represents a link to the Prophet Muhammad in Islamic history, while for Christians, it is connected to the life of Jesus in the early Christian church. Any attempt to change the status of the Temple Mount would be seen as an attack on these identities, leading to deep resentment and opposition. In summary, the push by radical Jewish groups to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount is deeply intertwined with religious eschatology, messianic expectations, and geopolitical realities. The temple's construction is seen by these groups as a necessary step toward the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, but it is also fraught with the potential for significant conflict, given the religious and political sensitivities involved,